Often when a game comes out and it's really good, people want a sequel. Maybe the first game was so good it made you want more, or the game establishing the potential for a franchise, whatever the case may be. But then there are some games that get sequels and you can't help but wonder, why? Now, to be clear, I'm not calling these games bad. In fact, some of these games are actually pretty good, and there's even one that is not out yet. But for one reason or another, nobody really asked for a sequel to their original games. Without further ado, welcome to the top 10 video game sequels nobody asked for. Now, before we get started, you know what to do. If you like this video, subscribe and hit the bell, leave a comment, or I will gouge your eyes out.
I wanted to give to you, the last part of your notes here, the significance spiritually of the number 10 in the Bible.
Remember like 2 seconds ago when I said that these games don't need to be bad? Well, case in point, Street Fighter 2, one of the most revolutionary games of all time, but despite, having the number 2 in the title, a lot of people don't realize that there was actually a Street Fighter game that came before this. And that game was so bad, I'm surprised Capcom even bothered giving it a sequel. Now, I do have to admire the original Street Fighter a little bit because of what the franchise and really the fighting game genre as a whole would evolve into, but good lord. For one, you can only play as Ryu. There are other characters in the game, but you only fight them. The other thing is, the game is kind of broken. Like, you press buttons and things might happen. I guarantee you nobody was asking to see a sequel to this game, but out of all the games on this list, I think it's safe to say that this is the best game, and we're definitely better off with it. The sequel, that is. Deadly Premonition. Possibly one of the most pulverizing games ever released. Some people say it's amazing, some people say it's dreadful, some people say it's so bad it's good, some people say it's mid. The game's reception is all over the place, it's safe to say. But since Deadly Premonition did in fact gain somewhat of a cult following, maybe people were asking for a sequel, maybe, but I doubt anybody was asking for Deadly Premonition, a game from 2010, to get a sequel in the year 2020, and as a Nintendo Switch exclusive. I feel like the people who give Deadly Premonition this cult status, they never talk about its sequel, and really, I can't blame them. Not that I played it myself and I'm calling it bad, but 10 years later, and as a Switch exclusive. Think about this. Deadly Premonition came out for the PS3 and Xbox 360, not the Wii. Deadly Premonition 2 did not come out for Xbox or PlayStation, it came out for the Switch. What? And as far as I've seen, aside from PC, it's still only on the Switch. How weird.
So I'm going to be giving this flavor 8.5 out of 10 scoops.
Even though it's not out yet, Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl recently got a sequel announced, and I'm not sure I know anybody who was clamoring for it. I actually remember being on the hype train for Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl only 2 years ago, but everyone, myself not included, okay, I knew better, made the major mistake of deeming it the Smash Killer, which was gonna doom the game from the start. Even though I wasn't expecting this game to be better than Smash, it still let me down by being unfinished, technically, visually, and content-wise, as it was missing many key features like voice acting, color swaps, and other modes, other than just the main fight mode. On top of that, the game was fed content at a snail's pace and kind of became a bit of a punching bag. So why are we getting a sequel? Sure, the first game sold well, but everyone dropped it in a week. Well, the sequel seems to be fixing a lot of issues I personally had with the first game when it comes to the content, but a quick look at the leaked roster, and it seems like they went too far with the out-of-left field picks and didn't pick that many characters that made sense. I'm sure I'll pick up Nickelodeon All-Star Brawl 2, but I've been burned before.
36.
Very close, but that's not it. Let's go to Gary the Retard. What number between 2 and 4?
7.
You know when a trailer for a game comes out and it's really damn good, but then the game comes out and it's nowhere near as good as what the trailer might have teased. That could be its own list, but, well, for that, I give you Dead Island. Now, to be honest, I didn't hate Dead Island, as it's a fine enough zombie game with the kind of humor that could get annoying and does sometimes, but it's serviceable. The thing is, though, I don't really think anybody asked for a sequel to Dead Island, but we got one. Now, I want to say this. The first Dead Island came out in 2011. Dead Island 2 had its first trailer drop in 2014. Dead Island 2 then came out in April of this year. Not only was Dead Island 2 a sequel that nobody asked for, but it was a game that took nearly 10 years to come out because of the many developer swaps and development restarting a lot. All is a recipe for disaster, but shockingly enough, Dead Island 2 came out and was pretty decent. Not bad for a sequel nobody asked for.
Okay, Mrs. Puff, what's my final score?
6.
New Super Mario Bros. Came out on the DS, and it was a solid return to form for 2D Mario, as his last 2D outing was Super Mario Land on the Game Boy. Even though it was simplistic and somewhat generic, it was still a solid return to form. Then we got New Super Mario Bros. Wii. Although it still played it rather safe, it was a joy to play, as it had couch co-op and was Mario's first 2D outing on a console since Super Mario World for the SNES. Then New Super Mario Bros. 2 came out on the 3DS, and at that point this series had kinda grown a little stale, but then not even 6 months later, New Super Mario Bros. U came out for the Wii U, and I feel like this was when most people started to get sick of the New Soup series. New Super Mario Bros. U wasn't bad, and it's not even the worst of the four, I feel. However, I feel like once New Soup 2 came out, nobody was really clamoring for another game in this series, let alone in the next 5 months. This solidified the New Super Mario Bros. Series, ironically, as a series that got old. And that's why I cannot wait for Super Mario Bros. Wonder, because it's a 2D Mario game that seems like something different.
Oh, chills. Literal chills.
It was number 5. Number 5 killed my brother.
Oh my god, I forgot about that.
If you want to talk about video game sequels, there are 16 numbered Final Fantasy entries, but weirdly enough, I can't really call any of them sequels, or at least direct sequels, because even though 16 is the number after 15, math, the story and world and characters of the two games are very different. But sometimes you actually get a direct sequel to one of the games, like Final Fantasy X-2. But Final Fantasy X was a fan favorite, so that makes sense to get a direct sequel. Final Fantasy XIII, however, quite the opposite, perhaps the most controversial game in the franchise, but it got not one, but 2 direct sequels, and nobody asked for either of them. I think even the people who did enjoy 13 really were not asking for a sequel to 13, like a direct sequel. Personally, I think 13 has some interesting ideas, but the story I just didn't care for, and in particular, Lightning is such a boring protagonist if I've ever seen one. It was clear that Square Enix wanted 13 to become the new 7, which is why they made 2 sequels to it, but all this did was further hurt the Final Fantasy brand. Alright, you want to talk about some viral sensations? I got one big one. Five Nights at Freddy's. It's a game where you explore a pizzeria with animatronics that turn out to be haunted. Yeah, it was a big hit, and I kinda feel like FNAF is a little overrated in that it's not as scary as everyone tells you. It really isn't. I get it, it's a perfect YouTuber and streamer game, but it's just not that scary. But let's look at this timeline. Five Nights at Freddy's came out on August 8th, 2014. Then on November 11th of the same year came Five Nights at Freddy's 2. Since then, on March 2nd, 2015, came Five Nights at Freddy's 3. But then, Five Nights at Freddy's 4 came out on July 23rd, 2015. 4 games in the span of not even 12 months. And that's not even to mention a whole bunch of non-numbered entries as well. I'm sure people were originally asking for a sequel, maybe, but this many, this quickly, is absurd. During the PS4 and Xbox One generation, I think it's fair to say that the PS4, look, I'm not getting into the console war shit. I think that whole thing is stupid, just play what you want, but I think it's safe to say that the PS4 at least had the stronger start. Nothing that they really did in particular, but really because the Xbox One had a pretty bad start. Because when the PS4 launched, the one launch title that wasn't cross-gen was Knack. This weird 3D platformer was meant to be the icon for the PS4. Like, remember how Sackboy from Little Big Planet was supposed to be the mascot of the PS3, and, you know, he was. But really, Knack is only remembered for its meme status. So, is that why it got a sequel? All jokes aside, I genuinely want to know who asked for Knack 2. Maybe it was the memes, but I actually don't remember the memes until after Knack 2 was announced. And on top of that, Knack 2 came out 5 years after Knack 1 did. People already moved on from Knack and realized that he was a failed mascot. But hey, Knack 2, baby.
Pencil do we take again?
Number 2. Take a number 2.
Looks like you took a big number 2.
So we go from a PS4 launch title to a Nintendo Switch launch title. I'm of course talking about 1-2 Switch. 1-2 Switch gets a lot of flack, but it's an ultimately harmless tech demo for the Switch that has next to no staying power. Maybe all the hate towards this game has to do with the fact that it was sold separately for $50 fucking. Regardless though, minus a random episode of my own series Solo Missions playing the game at the beginning of the year, go watch it and you'll see a very weird coincidence. I think it's safe to assume that within the past 6 years, 1-2 Switch became a complete afterthought to the brain. So believe me when I say that Everybody 1-2 Switch is perhaps Nintendo's most confusing release they have ever done. I keep asking this, but really, who asked for a sequel to 1-2 Switch? Especially when the Switch has gotten all these games over the years, why did we get a sequel to this? Well, apparently Nintendo was wondering that exact same thing and didn't even want to release it. And you can kind of tell. It doesn't have to do with the quality of the game, but this game had no marketing. The game was revealed with, like, negative fanfare. It was just announced and released all in the same month, and everyone just moved on. How weird.
I'm a Luigi, number 1.
Fuck sequels that nobody asked for. Who asked for Shaq Fu? A fighting game with Shaq as the main character. It got remembered in meme status and is nothing more than a punchline now. Because of course, Shaq Fu. Like, that name alone is begging to be a punchline. But even Shaq Fu, Shaq motherfucking Fu, gets a sequel 24 years later. Sure, the marketing played into the meme status because you can't unironically make a Shaq Fu sequel in 2018, but why? I guarantee you that nobody, even the people who gave Shaq Fu its cult following, ever asked for a sequel. It's not even a proper sequel. The first game was a fighting game. Shaq Fu is a beat-em-up. Well, to be fair, it was a crowdfunded game, which means people actually paid to help make the game into existence. So I guess that means people did kind of ask for this, but let's be real. They crowdfunded this game for the meme and maybe didn't even believe that anything would come of it. Regardless, even with a crowdfunding campaign, still, Shaq Fu, A Legend Reborn, is the #1 video game sequel nobody asked for. Those are the top 10 video game sequels nobody asked for. What do you guys think? I guarantee you someone down there has already gone down and commented, I asked for this sequel, and to that I say, no you didn't, stop lying to me. But hey, if there are any video game sequels I left out that you are perplexed by how they exist in the first place, leave a comment down below. Anyways, be sure to like this video, come subscribe, or I will gouge your eyes out. Bye!